I came home early from my night shift because the crane broke down. 27 years old, living in my parents' basement in suburban Ohio, trying to save money. I stood in the dark hallway, about to head downstairs, when I heard my mother crying in the kitchen. Then my father's voice, cold and calculated, talking about the $500,000 life insurance policy he'd taken out on me. If I died in a workplace accident, my younger brother Garrett could afford Johns Hopkins Medical School. They were discussing how to make my job site accidents more likely. My blood turned to ice. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard, I thought they'd hear it through the wall. I pressed myself against the hallway corner, barely breathing, straining to catch every word floating from the kitchen. My father's voice came through clear and steady, like he was discussing the weather. Garrett's acceptance came with zero financial aid. $60,000 per year for 4 years, plus living expenses. We're looking at close to $300,000 total. But Robert, this is our son, my mother whispered, her voice cracking. Atlas was never going anywhere anyway, my father said, and the casual dismissal in his tone cut deeper than any knife could. He's 27, working construction, living in our basement. Garrett's the smart one. He's our chance at having a doctor in the family. He deserves this opportunity. I'd moved back home 8 months ago to help with bills after my father's factory reduced his hours. I thought I was being a good son. Turns out I was just making myself available for murder. I've been calling his foreman, my father continued, pretending to be a concerned dad, asking questions about the site. There's an entire section on the 15th floor where the safety railings don't meet code. I asked Eddie which areas Atlas works in most. Eddie was my foreman. A good man. He had no idea he was helping my father plan my death. My mother's chair scraped against the linoleum. When did you take out the policy? 6 months ago. Through my group plan at work. Atlas doesn't even know he's insured. I listed it as dependent coverage. 6 months. Half a year of my father researching how to kill me while smiling at me across the dinner table. Half a year of, "How was work, son?" while he gathered intelligence on where I'd be most vulnerable. The waiting period is almost over, my father said. 2 more weeks, then any claims will be processed normally. We just need to be patient. What if he quits the job? My mother asked. He won't. He's saving for a truck. He tells me every week how close he's getting. The boy's predictable. The boy. Like I was still 12 years old, not a grown man who'd been supporting himself since 18, only coming home to help them when they needed it. I backed away from the wall slowly, carefully, placing each foot with precision to avoid the creaky floorboard near the bathroom. My hands were shaking. I made it to the basement door, slipped through, and descended the stairs to my room. The basement was finished, at least. Drywall, carpet, a small bathroom in the corner. My father had converted it years ago. Now I wondered if he'd always planned for it to be my tomb, a place to keep me close while he orchestrated my death. I sat on my bed in the darkness and stared at nothing. Every conversation, every interaction from the past 6 months replayed in my mind with new context. My father asking detailed questions about my harness equipment. My mother insisting I was working too hard, that I looked tired. Were they worried I'd be too alert to have an accident? The night crawled by. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, heard his voice saying I was never going anywhere anyway. Morning light filtered through the small basement windows. Upstairs, I heard footsteps. The coffee maker gurgling. Normal sounds of a normal morning, in a house where my parents were planning to profit from my death. I climbed the stairs, my legs heavy, my mind racing with what to do. Call the police? And say what? My parents talked about insurance? I had no proof, no recording, nothing but my word against theirs. I entered the kitchen. My mother stood at the stove, making eggs. My father sat at the table reading news on his tablet. They both looked up and smiled. "Morning, Atlas," my mother said warmly. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I managed. "Bad dreams?" my father asked, concern creasing his face. The performance was flawless. I poured coffee with trembling hands, trying to act normal, trying not to scream. Then the front door burst open. Footsteps in the hallway. My younger brother Garrett appeared in the kitchen doorway, grinning, a duffel bag over his shoulder. "Surprise!" he announced. My father's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "Garrett, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at your apartment." Garrett dropped his bag and headed straight for the coffee pot. "I've been thinking a lot. About my future, about medical school, about everything." He poured himself a cup and turned to face us, leaning against the counter. "I deferred Johns Hopkins for a year." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "You what?" My father's voice came out strangled. "I deferred. I want to take a gap year. Travel maybe. Really think about whether medicine is what I want. The advisor said it's actually common. Shows maturity to take time to reflect." My mother's face had gone pale. My father stood up slowly, his chair scraping loudly. "Garrett, we've talked about this," my father said, his voice tight and controlled. "Johns Hopkins doesn't wait. This is your dream." "Maybe it's your dream, Dad," Garrett said lightly. "I'm not sure it's mine anymore." I watched my father's hands clench into fists. The vein in his temple throbbed, and then his eyes slid to me, standing there with my coffee mug, and something cold and determined settled in his expression. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They couldn't wait a year. My father's embezzlement, his financial problems, whatever was driving this desperation, it had a timeline, and Garrett deferring had just accelerated it. My father forced a smile. "Let's talk about this later, son." "Atlas, don't you have work?" "Crane's broken." "Day off," I said quietly. "Then maybe you should look for a second job," my father said. His eyes locked on mine. "Save up faster for that truck." The message was clear. Get out of the house. Go somewhere dangerous. Make it easy for them. Garrett, oblivious to the undercurrent, launched into a story about his friend's trip to Europe. My mother stood frozen at the stove. My father sat back down, but his eyes never left me. I understood with horrible clarity. I didn't have months anymore. With Garrett deferring, putting their plans on hold for a year, my parents' timeline had just collapsed. Whatever was driving their desperation, they needed that insurance money now. I had weeks at best, maybe days. That afternoon, while my parents were out and Garrett had left to meet friends, I packed everything I owned into 3 duffel bags. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. I worked fast, adrenaline making my movements sharp and efficient. I had $7,300 saved in my checking account, enough for first month, last month, and security deposit on an apartment, enough to start over somewhere my parents couldn't reach me. I found a studio apartment across town within 2 hours of searching online. The landlord, a tired-looking woman named Cheryl, met me there at 4 in the afternoon. The place was small, 600 square feet, but it had a deadbolt and was 15 miles from my parents' house. "I can move in today?" I asked. Cheryl looked at my cash deposit and nodded. "Lease is 6 months. You seem desperate, honey. Everything okay?" "Just need a fresh start," I said. By 7 that evening, I was moved in. I texted my mother. "Got my own place. Need independence. We'll come by for dinner sometime." Her response came immediately. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." My father's text arrived 5 minutes later. "Good for you, son. Let me know if you need help with anything." The normalcy of their responses made my skin crawl, but I felt safer. Separate address, separate space, a locked door between me and them. I slept that night for the first time in 48 hours. The next morning, I showed up at my construction site at 6:30, ready for my shift. Eddie, my foreman, was waiting by the equipment trailer. His face looked grim. "Atlas, I need to talk to you in the office." My stomach dropped. I followed him to the small trailer that served as the site office. Inside, Eddie sat heavily in his chair and rubbed his face. "I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. We're letting you go." "What? Eddie? Why?" "Budget restructuring. Main office called yesterday. Your position's being eliminated." "Eddie, I'm one of your best workers. I've never had a safety violation. Never missed a day." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's not my decision, Atlas. It came from upper management." Here's your final check. He slid an envelope across the desk. I stared at it, my mind racing. Upper management. My father knew the site manager, Greg Peterson, from industry networking events. I'd heard them talking at a barbecue last summer, laughing about golf games and contract negotiations. Did my father have anything to do with this? I asked quietly. Eddie's silence was answer enough. I took the check and walked out. $2,300. 2 weeks' pay, plus my vacation payout. It wouldn't last long. I spent the next 3 weeks applying everywhere. Construction companies, warehouses, retail stores, restaurants. Late fall in Ohio meant construction work was scarce, everyone cutting crews before winter. I took odd jobs where I could find them. Raked leaves for $60, helped someone move for $80, delivered food orders for delivery apps, making maybe $15 an hour after gas. My savings evaporated. Rent, food, gas, utilities. By week 5, I had $400 left. By week 6, I was down to $73.50. My father called every few days. How's the job search? Need any help? You know you can always come home, son. No rent, home-cooked meals. Just until you get back on your feet. I refused every time. But the eviction notice taped to my door in week 7 made the decision for me. I sat in my empty studio apartment, staring at the notice. Past due rent, $1,200. 3 days to vacate or face legal eviction. I had $62 in my account. I called my mother. Hated myself for it, but had no choice. Mom, I need help. Oh, sweetie. Come home. We miss you. Just for a little while, until I find work. Of course. Your room's ready. We'll come get you. They arrived in an hour. My father driving his pickup truck, my mother in the passenger seat. They helped me load my bags with sympathetic smiles and comforting words. My father put his hand on my shoulder. Nothing wrong with needing family, son. That's what we're here for. We drove back to their house, back to the basement room, back into their reach. That night, I heard my father in the garage. Curious, I crept to the basement window that looked out into the garage bay. Through the grimy glass, I saw him bent over my truck, working under the hood. He was doing something with the brake lines. Cold fear washed over me. I watched him for 20 minutes, watched him cut something, then carefully patch it with what looked like epoxy. A temporary fix, designed to fail under pressure. He finished, wiped his hands, and came back inside whistling. The next morning at breakfast, my father smiled at me over his eggs. By the way, I topped off your fluids last night. Noticed your brake fluid was low. Consider it a welcome home gift. Thanks, Dad, I said, my mouth dry. You have that job interview today, right? The warehouse position? Yeah. 10 o'clock. Take your truck. Make a good impression. Show up on time. He wanted me to drive. To use the brakes he'd sabotaged. Actually, I think I'll take the bus. Want to save gas money. My father's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The bus doesn't run out that far. You'll be late. I'll leave early then. Atlas, don't be stubborn. Take your truck. My mother looked between us, tension radiating from her body. I'm taking the bus, I said firmly. I left the house at 8:30, caught the bus, transferred twice, and made it to the warehouse interview by 9:50. The manager liked me, said he'd call by Friday. I took the bus home. When I got back at 3 in the afternoon, my father was in the driveway, looking under my truck's hood. Strange thing, he said when he saw me. Your brake line has a leak. You really shouldn't drive this until it's fixed. Good thing you took the bus. He was covering his tracks, making it look like an innocent discovery. I'll get it fixed, I said. No need to spend money. I'll take it to Jimmy's shop tomorrow. Friend of mine. He'll do it cheap. More likely, he'd have Jimmy sabotage it properly this time. That evening, I lay in my basement room, trapped. No money, no job, no car I could trust, and no way out. I drifted into uneasy sleep around midnight. At 2 in the morning, something woke me. A sound upstairs. Footsteps in the kitchen. Then the basement door opened. Someone was coming down the stairs. I pretended to sleep. watching through barely open eyelids. In the dim light from the hallway, I saw my mother. She was carrying something. She walked to my mini fridge in the corner and opened it. I watched her add something to my orange juice container, shake it gently, then put it back. She stood there for a moment, her hand on the fridge door, her body shaking. Then she turned and climbed back upstairs. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close. Then I got up, took the orange juice, and poured it down the bathroom sink. I rinsed the container thoroughly, filled it with water, and put it back. Whatever she'd added to it, I wasn't going to drink it. The next morning, I pretended to drink orange juice at breakfast, making a show of emptying a glass. My mother watched me with red-rimmed eyes. By afternoon, I felt fine. She looked confused. That night, she came down again. This time, I watched her add something to my milk. I poured it out after she left. This went on for 4 days. She poisoned my food and drinks. I disposed of them secretly, and she grew increasingly frustrated that I wasn't getting sick. I survived on crackers and peanut butter I kept hidden under my bed, and water I drank directly from the bathroom tap. On the 5th day, Garrett came home for Thanksgiving break. He found me in the basement, looking gaunt and exhausted from lack of proper food. "Atlas, you look terrible. Are you sick?" I stared at my younger brother, 22 years old. Brilliant, the golden child. Could I trust him? "I need to talk to you," I said quietly. "Close the door." He did. I told him everything. The overheard conversation, the break line, the poisoning, all of it. Garrett's face went white. "That's insane. Mom and Dad wouldn't." "I know what I heard. I know what I saw." Garrett paced the small basement, running his hands through his hair. "This is crazy. This can't be real. Help me prove it. Record them, admitting it." He stopped pacing and looked at me. "How?" "Confront them. Tell them you know. Get them to confess. Record it on your phone." Garrett thought about it for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. Tonight. After dinner." Thanksgiving dinner was a surreal affair. Turkey and stuffing and cranberry sauce, while my mother smiled at me, and my father asked about my job prospects. Garrett barely touched his food. After dinner, Garrett said, "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you, privately." My parents exchanged glances. "Of course, honey. Living room." "Atlas should stay downstairs," my father said. "Actually, this involves him," Garrett replied. I stayed at the top of the basement stairs, the door cracked open, listening. In the living room, Garrett's voice was shaking but determined. "I know what you're trying to do to Atlas." Silence. Then my father's voice. "Careful." "What do you mean?" "The insurance policy. The accidents. I know everything." My mother gasped. My father's voice turned cold. "Did Atlas tell you some paranoid story?" "He overheard you, and he's been watching. Mom poisoning his food. Dad sabotaging his truck. Those are serious accusations," my father said. "Where's this coming from, Garrett?" "I want the truth." "Are you trying to kill Atlas for insurance money?" A pause. Then my father laughed. A genuine, warm laugh that made my blood run cold. "All right, son. You want the truth?" "Yes, we are." "Robert," my mother hissed. "He knows, Janet. What's the point in lying?" My father's voice was calm, rational. "Here's the reality, Garrett. We're in serious financial trouble. I made some mistakes at work. Took some money I shouldn't have. I have to pay it back or I'm going to prison. The insurance money solves everything. It pays my debt, pays for your medical school, and gets rid of a son who was never going to amount to anything anyway." "Dad, that's murder," Garrett said, his voice cracking. "That's pragmatism," my father corrected. "Atlas doesn't contribute anything meaningful to the world. You could save lives. It's simple math." "I won't be part of this," Garrett said. "You already are," my father replied. "Who do you think suggested this in the first place?" The world stopped spinning. "What?" Garrett's voice was barely a whisper. "Last Christmas you came to me crying about Johns Hopkins, about how you couldn't take out loans, how it would ruin your life. You said, 'I wish we had the money.' I said, 'What would you do for it?' And you said, 'Anything.' Remember that conversation, son? Silence. I asked you hypothetically, if Atlas died, would you take the insurance money? And you said yes. You said he was wasting his life anyway. So I ran with it. I made it happen. For you. You're lying, Garrett said. Am I? Check your phone, son. Recording all this? Smart. Except I've had your phone linked to mine through our family tracking since you were 16. I can see everything you do. Watch. A moment later, Garrett's voice panicked. How did you? My recording. I deleted it while you were talking. Remote access. The beauty of technology. I heard footsteps. Someone coming toward the basement door. I backed away quickly, but not quickly enough. The door flew open. Garrett stood there, his phone in his hand, his face twisted in something horrible. Not fear, not horror. Triumph. He's been listening, Garrett said over his shoulder. Then to me, did you hear all that, Atlas? About how I suggested this? I stared at my brother. You're lying. Dad's manipulating you. Garrett smiled. It was a smile I'd never seen on his face before. Cold, calculating. I wasn't recording them, Atlas. I was recording you. Your reaction. Your confession about listening. Now they have evidence you're paranoid, delusional, spying on your own family. My father appeared behind Garrett. Thanks, son. Very helpful. I ran. Back into the basement, looking for a way out. But the windows were too small. The door was blocked. My father came down the stairs with Garrett behind him. I'm sorry it has to be this way, my father said. They grabbed me. I fought, but there were two of them. They dragged me to the utility room in the back of the basement. My father pulled out zip ties. This is just temporary, my father said, binding my wrists behind my back, until we figure out what to do with you. They left me there, on the cold concrete floor of the utility room, and locked the basement door from the outside. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I was trapped in my own home, bound by my own family. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was knowing my brother had engineered it all. The utility room was 8 feet by 10 feet, lit by a single bulb, filled with the water heater, furnace, and storage boxes stacked against the walls. Cold concrete floor. No windows. One door that was now locked from the outside. My wrists were zip-tied behind my back, cutting into my skin. I worked at them for an hour, trying different angles, different pressures, but they wouldn't budge. Industrial-grade plastic, probably from my father's factory. Eventually, exhaustion won. I slumped against the wall and waited. Morning came. I knew because I heard footsteps upstairs. The breakfast routine. Coffee maker. Dishes clattering. Muffled voices. Around 8, the deadbolt slid open. My father came down, carrying a paper bag and a bottle of water. Morning, he said pleasantly. He set the bag and water on a storage box near me. Bagel and cream cheese. I'm going to cut the ties on your wrists so you can eat. If you try anything, you'll regret it. He cut the ties with scissors. My hands were numb, streaked with red marks. I rubbed circulation back into them while he watched. We're not monsters, my father said. We'll feed you, give you water. The bathroom's right there. He gestured to the small bathroom in the corner of the utility room. You'll be comfortable enough. For how long? My voice came out hoarse. Until you're willing to cooperate. Cooperate how? He smiled. Sign some paperwork, insurance documents, updated beneficiaries. Then we'll talk about your future. He was going to make me sign my own death warrant. Probably life insurance with a suicide clause that he'd exploit after a waiting period. I didn't touch the food. Couldn't. My stomach was twisted in knots. My father sighed. Starving yourself won't help, Atlas. But suit yourself. He left, locked the door again. I heard him climb the stairs. I spent the day searching the utility room for anything useful. The storage boxes were mostly old holiday decorations, winter clothes, photo albums. Nothing that could help me escape. Then, in a box labeled Atlas School Stuff, I found it. My old laptop from high school. A beaten-up Dell I'd used for papers and research. I opened it, not expecting anything, and it powered on. Battery at 8%. No charger in the box. 8% battery. Maybe 20 minutes of power if I was lucky. I looked around frantically. In the corner, behind the water heater, I saw it. An old Ethernet port. This house was built in the 90s, when they hardwired internet connections in every room. I grabbed the laptop, found an Ethernet cable in another box, and plugged in, connected. I had internet. 15% battery remaining somehow. The laptop must have had residual charge. First thought, call the police. But how? No phone access through the laptop, and filing an online report would take too long, require too much explanation, and they'd probably dismiss it. I needed evidence, proof of what my parents were doing. My father, his email. Did he still use the same password from years ago? I tried logging into his email account. Wrong password. I tried variations, added numbers, changed capitals. Nothing worked. Then percent battery. Think. Atlas. Think. My father's work email. He used to write it on the kitchen calendar. An address at the factory domain. I tried that instead, using his old password formula. It worked. I was in my father's work email account. And there in his sent folder was everything. Months of correspondence. Emails to the insurance agent about my policy. Emails researching construction site accident statistics. Web browsing history, showing searches for how to cut brake lines, and undetectable poisons, and life insurance payout timeline. He'd kept it all in his work account, probably thinking it was more private than his personal email. 5% battery. I created a new email account. A random name. Nothing connected to me. I forwarded every incriminating email to this new account. Downloaded the most damaging ones as screenshots. Found a USB drive in the school box. Copied everything to it. 3% battery. I created backups in 3 different free email services, forwarding the evidence to each one. The laptop screen dimmed, warning me of critical battery. 1%. I logged out, shut it down. Hid the laptop back in the box. Took the USB drive and looked for a hiding place. The foundation. In the corner of the utility room, where the concrete wall met the floor, there was a crack. Old house settling. I pushed the USB drive deep into the crack, covered it with dust and grime. The door opened. My father was back with dinner. Turkey sandwich, apple, water. "You look better," he said, feeling more cooperative. "No," he sighed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." He left again. I ate the sandwich this time. Needed strength. 3 days passed in that utility room. My father brought meals. My mother never came down. Garrett came once, looked at me through the doorway, and left without saying anything. On the 4th day, my father came down with news. "Got you a job interview, warehouse position, decent pay." "I'm locked in a basement," I said flatly. "You'll be let out for the interview. On the condition you behave. Don't try to run. Don't try to tell anyone. If you do, we'll simply say you're mentally unstable." Who do you think they'll believe? Concerned parents, or a son with wild conspiracy theories? What makes you think I'll come back after the interview? Because if you don't, I'll report you for assault. I have bruises from when you attacked me during your paranoid episode. Garrett will testify. You'll be arrested. Either way, we control what happens to you. He was right. I had no moves left. When's the interview? Tomorrow. 10 in the morning. That night, I barely slept. I knew this was a trap. A warehouse interview. Isolated location. A setup for another accident. But it was also my only chance to get out. Morning came. My father brought me clean clothes. Let me shower in the utility room bathroom. Gave me 15 minutes. I got dressed. We went upstairs. The morning light hurt my eyes after 4 days in the basement. My mother was at the kitchen table. She looked at me, her face expressionless, and looked away. Garrett was there too, eating cereal. He didn't look up. My father drove me to the interview. 20 minutes outside town. Industrial area. Old warehouses. Most of them empty. We pulled up to a building with a for-lease sign. No cars in the parking lot. Dad, this place looks closed. The interview's inside. Manager's running late. He said to wait inside. Doors open. Everything in me screamed danger. Come on, my father said. Don't be difficult. We got out of the truck. My father walked to the warehouse door, tested it. It opened. Inside was darkness. I'll wait in the truck, my father said. Good luck, son. I stepped inside. The warehouse was vast, empty, concrete floor littered with debris. Light filtered through grimy windows. Then I heard it. Behind me. The door closing. Locking. I spun around. Through a dirty window, I saw my father walking back to his truck. But he wasn't alone. Garrett was getting out of a car parked behind the warehouse. They were both here. I tried the door. Locked. I ran to the other exits. All chained from outside. They came in through a side door. My father and Garrett, both wearing grim expressions. Sorry, Atlas, my father said. No interview. Just an unfortunate warehouse accident. You were exploring an abandoned building. Something fell on you. Tragic. Garrett was pulling equipment from a bag. Chains. A metal pipe. They were going to stage my death. Right here, right now. I ran. Deeper into the warehouse, looking for a weapon. Another exit. Anything. Found a piece of rebar on the ground. Grabbed it. Atlas, don't make this harder, my father called. They were coming after me. I hid behind old machinery, trying to think. 2 against 1. My father was 53 but strong from factory work. Garrett was younger than me, athletic. I had one piece of rebar, and desperation. They split up, trying to corner me. I heard Garrett's footsteps to my left, my father's to my right. I made a decision. Charged at Garrett, swinging the rebar. He dodged, but I caught his shoulder. He yelled, stumbled back. My father tackled me from behind. We went down hard. The rebar skittered away. My father punched me in the ribs. Once. Twice. I felt something crack. Garrett recovered. Grabbed the rebar. Stood over me while my father held me down. Let's get this over with, Garrett said, raising the rebar. Then I heard it. A sound I'd never been so happy to hear in my life. Sirens. Multiple vehicles. Car doors slamming. Voices shouting. Police, we're coming in. My father's grip loosened in shock. I shoved him off, scrambled away. The side door burst open. 6 officers in tactical gear poured in, guns drawn. Drop the weapon. Hands up. Garrett dropped the rebar. My father tried to run, but an officer tackled him. I collapsed against a wall, ribs screaming, gasping for breath. A woman in a suit approached me. Detective's badge. Late 40s. Sharp eyes. Atlas Davies? I nodded. Couldn't speak. I'm Detective Linda Foster. You're safe now. An officer helped me up. EMTs came in, started checking me over. Broken ribs, they said. Severe bruising. Possible concussion. They arrested my father and Garrett on the spot. Read them their rights while I watched. Still not fully believing this was real. Detective Foster sat with me while the EMTs wrapped my ribs. We got your email 6 hours ago, she explained. The one you sent from the hospital computer. What? I didn't. Then I remembered. The laptop. But I never sent anything from a hospital. You sent evidence to the police department's tip line. Emails, documents, everything. I recognized your father's name immediately. My husband works at the same factory. When I saw what you'd sent, we started an investigation. But I didn't send anything to the police. I saved it to backup emails, but she frowned. Someone sent it. Maybe you don't remember? You've been through trauma. I realized what must have happened. Someone else found my evidence somehow. But who? I'd hidden the USB drive in the foundation crack. There's something else, Detective Foster said, her voice careful. When we started investigating your father, we found evidence of embezzlement. He's been stealing from the factory for 2 years. $300,000. My head spun. What? He's been covering it with creative accounting, but an audit was coming. He needed money fast to replace what he stole, or he'd go to prison. That's probably why he accelerated his plans with you. So it wasn't just about Garrett's tuition. My father was desperate, cornered, and decided his son's life insurance was the solution. What happens now? I asked. They'll be charged. Attempted murder, conspiracy, assault, kidnapping. Your father's also facing embezzlement charges. What kind of sentence? She hesitated. District attorney will offer plea deals. Your father might get 7 years. Your brother, maybe 2. Depends on their lawyers. 7 years. For trying to murder me. For planning it for months. For terrorizing me. For destroying my life. That's it? I said, anger rising through the pain. I'm sorry. The system isn't perfect. At least they'll serve time. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. They took me to the hospital, admitted me for observation, gave me pain medication that made the world fuzzy and distant. I lay in the hospital bed and realized that even though I'd survived, even though they'd been caught, my family had still won in a way. They'd destroyed my trust, my safety, my sense of home, and they'd get slap-on-the-wrist sentences while I'd carry this trauma forever. The medication pulled me under. I slept and dreamed of basements and brake lines, and my brother's cold smile. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Broken ribs, severe bruising, malnutrition from my days of eating only crackers and peanut butter. The doctors were concerned about my mental state, too. A psychiatrist visited. A woman named Dr. Sarah Brennan. Kind eyes, gentle voice. You've been through severe trauma, she said, both physical and psychological. The betrayal by family members is one of the deepest wounds a person can experience. I told her everything. She listened without judgment, took notes, nodded in understanding. I'm going to recommend ongoing therapy, she said. You'll need support processing this, and I'll write a detailed report for the district attorney. Your testimony will be crucial. Detective Foster visited on the second day. She brought good news and bad news. Good news. We executed search warrants. Found extensive evidence at your parents' house. The laptop with your father's searches. Financial documents. Even found residue in your food containers that tested positive for antifreeze. My stomach turned. Antifreeze. My mother had been slowly poisoning me with antifreeze. Bad news. The district attorney is pressuring for plea deals. The courts are backed up. Trials take years. They want this resolved quickly. What kind of deals? I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Your father. 7 years for embezzlement and attempted murder. Sentences running concurrent. Your brother. 2 years for conspiracy and assault. With good behavior, your father could be out in 5 years. Your brother in 18 months. 5 years, 18 months, for trying to murder me. That's not justice, I said. I agree. But the DA says a trial is risky. Juries are unpredictable. Your family's lawyers will claim your father had a mental breakdown from financial stress, that your brother was manipulated. They'll paint you as unstable, paranoid. Your own mental health hospitalization could be used against you. I was never hospitalized for mental health. The warehouse incident. Your father's lawyers will call it a psychotic break. They'll twist everything. I felt the walls closing in again. Even from jail, my family was controlling the narrative. Don't accept the plea, I said. I want a trial. Detective Foster sighed. Atlas, I understand. But trials can go wrong. You could end up with them getting even less time, or worse, acquitted. I don't care. I want them to face a jury. I want everyone to know what they did. She looked at me for a long moment. Okay. I'll tell the DA you're refusing the plea. But be prepared for a fight. They discharged me from the hospital with nowhere to go. Victim Services put me in a motel, paid for 2 weeks. A small room with a microwave and mini fridge. Better than my parents' basement. I had no job, no money, no support system. The hospital bills alone were going to be crushing. I'd lost my truck when my father sabotaged it. Everything I owned fit in 2 duffel bags. But I was alive. I spent days in that motel room, recovering physically but falling apart mentally. The isolation was suffocating. I'd wake up from nightmares about my brother standing over me with a piece of rebar. About my mother adding poison to my orange juice with shaking hands. About my father calmly explaining that I was never going anywhere anyway. 2 weeks after the warehouse incident, I got a call from Dr. Brennan. "Atlas, I wanted to check on you. Are you all right?" The concern in her voice broke something in me. I told her about the motel, the isolation, the nightmares. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "At the hospital, I treated you like a typical trauma victim. I should have recognized the signs earlier. Your family's manipulation was sophisticated. I'm sorry I didn't see it. You had no way of knowing. Still, I want to help. I've been thinking about your case. If this goes to trial, I'd like to testify. About the psychological abuse, the systematic terrorizing. Juries need to understand the mental torture you endured, not just the physical attempts." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "There's something else. I have a former patient who might be able to help you. His name is James Patterson. He's a private investigator. Retired now, but brilliant at finding evidence. I'll give him your number if that's okay." I agreed. What did I have to lose? James called that afternoon. Deep voice, straightforward manner. "Dr. Brennan told me your situation. I'm sorry for what happened to you. I'd like to help, pro bono. I hate family abusers." "Why pro bono?" "Personal reasons. My sister went through something similar. Didn't end well for her. I like to think helping people like you balances the scales a little." We met at a diner the next day. James was in his 60s, gray hair, sharp suit. He ordered coffee and got straight to business. "Tell me everything. Leave nothing out." I spent 2 hours walking him through every detail. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, recorded parts with my permission. When I finished, he leaned back and tapped his pen on his notepad. "Your father's sloppy, arrogant. Kept digital records of everything because he thought he was smarter than everyone else. That's good for us. But there's something bothering me." "What?" "The timeline. Your father's been embezzling for 2 years but only took out your life insurance 6 months ago. What changed 6 months ago? Why then?" I thought back. 6 months ago, last April. I don't know. Nothing significant happened. Think harder. Family events? Financial changes? Anything unusual? Then I remembered. Garrett got his acceptance to Johns Hopkins. Late March. James nodded slowly. So the acceptance came first, then the policy. Which means the primary motive was the tuition, not covering the embezzlement. The embezzlement was discovered later. Does that matter? It matters for establishing intent. It shows premeditation. Your father didn't panic and make a desperate decision. He coldly calculated your death as a solution to funding your brother's education. That plays very differently to a jury. Over the next 3 weeks, James worked tirelessly. He dug into my father's finances, found patterns of theft going back even further. 26 months, not 24. He interviewed people at the factory, got statements about my father's behavior and spending. Then he found something bigger. "Atlas, I need you to sit down for this." We were in his office, a small room above an insurance agency. He pulled out a file folder, thick with documents. I went back further. "Looked at your family history. Deaths, insurance claims, anything unusual. And your uncle Marcus, your father's brother, died 12 years ago in a car accident. Single vehicle crash, drove off a mountain road in Colorado. He had a $500,000 life insurance policy. Your father was the beneficiary." My blood went cold. "And your cousin Emily, your mother's niece, died 9 years ago, drowned in a lake while on vacation with your parents. She was 18, had a policy through her university. $250,000. Your mother was listed as emergency contact and beneficiary because Emily's parents had died the year before. You think. I think your parents have been running insurance schemes for over a decade. I can't prove the deaths were murders, but the pattern is there. And there's one more thing." He pulled out another document. "Your grandfather, on your mother's side, died 14 years ago. Fell down the basement stairs in the house where you were living. The same house, the same basement. He had a will leaving everything to your mother. $300,000 in assets. The room spun. My parents weren't desperate amateurs. They were practiced killers who'd been doing this for years. "We need to take this to Detective Foster," James said. We met with Detective Foster and the district attorney the next day, laid out everything James had found. The DA, a stern woman in her 50s named Patricia Chen, reviewed the files carefully. "This changes things," she said finally. "With this pattern, we're not looking at a single desperate act. We're looking at potential serial murder for financial gain." "Can we prove the old deaths were murders?" Detective Foster asked. "Not definitively," James admitted, "but we can establish a pattern of behavior. Multiple family deaths, all resulting in large insurance payouts to Atlas's parents. It creates reasonable doubt about any defense claiming this was a one-time mental breakdown." Patricia Chen looked at me. "Atlas, with this evidence, I'm withdrawing the plea offers. We're taking this to trial. Multiple counts of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and we'll be investigating the previous deaths." "What kind of sentences are we looking at now?" I asked. "If convicted on all counts, your father could face 30 years to life. Your brother, 8 to 15 years. This is serious prison time." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. But then Patricia added, "However, this means a long trial. Possibly months. Their lawyers will fight hard. And you'll have to testify to everything. Multiple times. It's going to be brutal." "I can handle it," I said. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I knew I had to try. The trial date was set for 6 months out. In the meantime, I needed to survive. James helped me file for victim compensation, which provided some financial support. Dr. Brennan continued seeing me for therapy, often reducing her fees to almost nothing. And slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild. I found a job at a grocery store. Stocking shelves, nothing glamorous, but honest work. Got a studio apartment, smaller than the last one but mine. Started saving money again. But the nightmares persisted. And the fear. Every stranger on the street could be someone my family hired. Every knock on the door could be danger. I was alive, but I wasn't living. I was surviving, and I wouldn't truly be free until they faced justice. The trial began on a cold morning in March, almost 9 months after the warehouse incident. The courthouse was an imposing stone building downtown, steps slick with melting snow. I sat in the gallery with James beside me. The courtroom filled with people, journalists, curious onlookers, my father's co-workers, people I didn't recognize. My father and Garrett were led in wearing suits, looking respectable and calm. Their lawyers, expensive corporate types, flanked them with confident expressions. My father looked older than I remembered. Gray had spread through his hair, but his eyes were the same, cold and calculating when they found me across the courtroom. Garrett looked scared. Good. The judge, a stern man in his 60s named Judge Howard Reynolds, called the court to order. Jury selection had taken 3 days. We had 7 women and 5 men, mix of ages and backgrounds. Patricia Chen stood to deliver the opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a father who valued money more than his son's life, about a brother who saw his sibling as an obstacle to be removed, about a systematic, calculated plan to murder Atlas Davies for insurance money." She laid out the evidence methodically. The overheard conversation, the sabotaged brake line, the poisoning, the warehouse ambush, the laptop evidence, the pattern of suspicious family deaths. "The defense will try to convince you this was a misunderstanding, a family dispute blown out of proportion. But the evidence will show you the truth. This was attempted murder, pure and simple." The defense attorney, a man named Roger Sutton, gave their opening statement next. "The prosecution wants you to believe my clients are monsters. But Robert Davies is a man who made mistakes, yes, but who never intended to harm his son. Atlas Davies has struggled with paranoia and mental health issues following a workplace accident. What the prosecution calls evidence is actually a series of misunderstandings and coincidences twisted by a troubled young man into a conspiracy theory. They were going with the mental illness defense. making me the unstable one. The trial proceeded for weeks. The prosecution called witness after witness. Detective Foster testified about the investigation, the evidence found at my parents' house. The mechanic testified about the deliberately cut brake line. The toxicologist testified about antifreeze residue in my food containers. Eddie, my former foreman, testified reluctantly about my father's phone calls asking about dangerous areas of the construction site. Dr. Brennan testified about my psychological state, explaining how I was the victim of systematic abuse and gaslighting, not a paranoid individual. James testified about the pattern of deaths in my family, the insurance payouts, the suspicious circumstances. Then it was my turn. I took the stand on a Tuesday morning. The courtroom was packed. I swore to tell the truth and sat in the witness box, my hands sweating. Patricia Chen led me through my testimony. I told them everything. The overheard conversation, the move, the job loss, the poisoning, the captivity, the warehouse. I spoke for 3 hours, my voice steady despite the terror churning in my gut. Then came cross-examination. Roger Sutton approached with a sympathetic smile. "Mr. Davies, I'm sorry for what you've been through. The workplace accident that caused your concussion must have been terrifying." "It wasn't an accident. My father cut my brake line." "But you have no proof your father was near your vehicle that day, correct?" "I saw him in the garage the night before, working on your truck, which he says was to help you. You interpreted this as sabotage because you'd already convinced yourself your parents wanted to hurt you. Isn't that correct?" "No. I heard them planning it." "You heard a conversation through a wall from another room. Are you certain you heard correctly? Couldn't you have misinterpreted?" "I know what I heard. Mr. Davies, you were hospitalized for psychological evaluation after the warehouse incident. Were you not?" "Because my father had me placed on a hold. It was part of his plan." "Or because you were experiencing a mental health crisis. The doctors noted paranoid ideation, didn't they?" Patricia Chen objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Roger Sutton continued for 2 more hours, picking apart my testimony, suggesting alternative explanations for everything, painting me as unreliable. When I finally stepped down, I felt hollowed out. The defense called their witnesses. My mother testified, tears streaming down her face, saying she loved me and would never hurt me. She claimed she'd been adding vitamin supplements to my food, not poison, because I looked ill. The supplements tested as antifreeze later proved she was lying, but her performance on the stand was convincing. Character witnesses testified about my father's reputation as a good man, a devoted father. Garrett testified. My younger brother took the stand and lied through his teeth. "I never wanted Atlas hurt. Dad talked about insurance, but I thought he meant legitimate financial planning. When I realized what he meant, I tried to stop him. That's why I went to the warehouse, to stop Dad." Atlas misunderstood. The lies were smooth, practiced. Garrett had always been good at manipulating people. Then came the surprise testimony. The defense called Tyler, the orderly from my psychiatric hold. I'd forgotten about him entirely. "Mr. Thompson, you worked at the behavioral health unit, where Atlas Davies was held, correct?" "Yes, sir." "Did you allow Mr. Davies access to your personal electronic device?" Tyler looked uncomfortable. He asked to check sports scores. I felt bad for him. "And did he use your device for more than checking scores?" "I don't know. I stepped away for a few minutes." "You were disciplined for this breach of protocol, correct?" "Yes." "Is it possible Mr. Davies used your device to create false emails, fabricate evidence, in an attempt to frame his family?" Tyler hesitated. "I suppose it's possible." The courtroom erupted. Judge Reynolds called for order. Patricia Chen stood for redirect. "Mr. Thompson, the emails in question were sent from the defendant's work account and created before Mr. Davies ever met you. The timestamps prove they couldn't have been created on your device." "Oh. Then no. He couldn't have created them." But again, the damage was done. The defense had planted doubt. The trial dragged on for 7 weeks. Every day was exhausting, watching lawyers argue over my life, my truth, my trauma. Finally, closing arguments. Patricia Chen delivered a powerful summary of the evidence, the pattern, the irrefutable proof of intent. Roger Sutton argued reasonable doubt. Mental illness. Family tragedy misunderstood. The jury deliberated for 4 days. On the 5th day, they returned. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant Robert Davies? Guilty. My body sagged with relief. James gripped my shoulder. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find the defendant Garrett Davies? Guilty. They'd done it. The jury had seen through the lies. My father was convicted on all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement. Garrett was convicted on conspiracy, assault, and fraud charges. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. But as I left the courthouse that day, surrounded by reporters shouting questions, I realized something. The conviction felt hollow. Yes, they'd been found guilty, but nothing could give me back what they'd taken. My sense of safety, my ability to trust, my family. I'd won the battle, but the war inside me was far from over. Sentencing day arrived. Judge Reynolds looked down at my father and brother with disgust. Robert Davies, you are sentenced to 30 years to life in state prison for the attempted murder and related charges. Garrett Davies, you are sentenced to 8 years in state prison. 30 years. 8 years. Real prison time. My father showed no emotion as he was led away. Garrett looked back at me once, his eyes full of something I couldn't read. Regret? Anger? I didn't care anymore. Outside the courthouse, Patricia Chen shook my hand. You did it, Atlas. You got justice. But as I walked away from that courthouse, past the reporters and the cameras, I realized justice wasn't the same as healing. I still had nightmares. Still jumped at loud noises. Still couldn't trust anyone fully. The legal victory was just the beginning of a much longer battle. 2 weeks after the criminal trial ended, James came to my apartment with an idea. You should sue them. Civil court. For damages. I was sitting on my second-hand couch, drinking coffee, trying to figure out how to afford next month's rent on my grocery store salary. Sue them for what? They're going to prison. They have no money. Your father had assets before the embezzlement came to light. The house, retirement accounts. Your mother still has access to those. Plus the insurance policy still exists. $500,000, with you as the insured party. You can claim that money as damages. My mother would never agree to that. She won't have a choice. With your father convicted, you have grounds for a civil suit. Emotional distress, attempted murder, loss of income, medical expenses. A jury could award you everything. The idea of facing another trial made me sick. But the idea of my parents keeping any money while I struggled to survive made me sicker. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Filing the civil suit was easier than I expected. James helped me find a lawyer willing to work on contingency. A woman named Angela Martinez, sharp and aggressive. We're going for everything, Angela said at our first meeting. The house, the retirement funds, the insurance payout, plus punitive damages. Your father destroyed your life. He should pay for it literally. My mother fought it, hired her own lawyer. Claimed she was a victim too, that she'd been manipulated by my father. The civil trial was shorter than the criminal one. 3 weeks instead of 7. The evidence was already established from the criminal case. This was just about damages. I testified again, this time about the financial impact. How I'd lost my job, my apartment, my truck, the medical bills from the warehouse incident, and hospital stays, the therapy costs that were piling up. Dr. Brennan testified about the long-term psychological damage, estimating I'd need years of treatment. James presented evidence of the assets my parents still held. The house was worth $420,000. My father had $230,000 in retirement accounts. My mother had access to it all. The defense argued my mother shouldn't be held responsible for my father's actions, that she'd been scared, coerced, a victim herself. But the evidence of her poisoning me, testifying falsely at trial, actively participating in the plot, destroyed that argument. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They awarded me the full $500,000 insurance policy, plus $300,000 in additional damages. Total, $800,000. My mother's lawyer filed appeals, but they all failed. 6 months later, the money hit my account. After lawyer fees and taxes, I had $615,000. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having, more than my father had tried to kill me for. The first thing I did was pay off my medical debt. $53,000 gone. Then I paid James. He'd said pro bono, but I insisted. Gave him $50,000. He tried to refuse. I told him he'd saved my life and deserved every penny. I paid Dr. Brennan for all the sessions she'd reduced to nothing. She cried when I handed her the check. Then I sat in my apartment and stared at my bank account, paralyzed by possibility. What was I supposed to do with this money? With this life I'd somehow survived? Dr. Brennan helped me figure it out. What do you want, Atlas? Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want? I thought about it for weeks, and slowly, the answer came. I wanted to help people, people like me, people whose families had betrayed them, abused them, tried to destroy them, people who were trapped and scared and didn't know how to escape. I enrolled in community college, started taking classes in social work and psychology. I was 28 years old, starting over, but it felt right. I used part of the money to start a small non-profit organization, called it Second Family Foundation. The mission: help family abuse victims navigate the legal system, find resources, escape dangerous situations. James came on as a volunteer investigator. Dr. Brennan joined the advisory board. Angela Martinez offered pro bono legal services. We started small. A website, a hotline, referrals to therapists, and lawyers, and shelters. Within 6 months, we'd helped 12 people escape abusive family situations. Within a year, 47. I moved into a better apartment, not fancy but safe. Solid locks, security system, ground floor with multiple exits. I couldn't handle feeling trapped anymore. I started dating. Rachel, a teacher I met at a coffee shop. She knew my story. Everyone in town did after the trial made national news. But she saw me, not just my trauma. "You're not defined by what they did to you," she said on our third date. "You're defined by what you did after." 2 years after the warehouse incident, I stood at a fundraiser for Second Family Foundation. 100 people in attendance, donations pouring in, success stories from people we'd helped. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Garrett. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. I was young and stupid and desperate. I destroyed our family. I destroyed you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I think about what I did every single day. I have 6 years left in prison. When I get out, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends, even though I know I never can." I stared at the message for a long time. Felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no forgiveness. Just emptiness where my brother used to be. I deleted the message without responding. Rachel found me standing alone in the corner of the fundraiser venue. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just remembering." "Want to leave?" "No. I want to stay. I want to see this. All these people we've helped. All the good that came from something so horrible." She took my hand. We rejoined the event. Someone approached. A young woman, maybe 23, tears in her eyes. "Mr. Davies, I wanted to thank you. Your foundation helped me escape my parents last year. They were like yours. I'm safe now. I'm alive because of you." She hugged me, thanked me again, and walked away. Rachel squeezed my hand. "See? You matter." I did matter. Not because of a college degree or a fancy career, because I'd taken my pain and transformed it into purpose. My parents had tried to erase me, to reduce me to a dollar amount on an insurance policy. Instead, I'd become someone who saved lives. That was victory. That was justice. That was healing. 3 years after the trial, I graduated from community college with my associate degree in social work. I was 30 years old, standing on a stage in a cheap cap and gown, holding a piece of paper that represented starting over. Rachel was in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. Dr. Brennan was there too. James, Angela, Tyler, the orderly who'd inadvertently helped me by letting me use his tablet. Even Eddie, my former foreman, showed up. My family, the one I'd chosen, not the one I was born into. Second Family Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We now had a staff of 5, an office downtown, and partnerships with law enforcement agencies across 3 states. We'd helped over 200 people escape abusive family situations. I was working toward my bachelor's degree, taking night classes while running the foundation during the day. Rachel and I had moved in together, a small house with a fenced yard and a dog named Murphy. Life wasn't perfect. The nightmares still came sometimes. I still struggled with trust, with anxiety, with the deep wounds that betrayal by family leaves. Therapy was ongoing, probably would be for years. But I was living, not just surviving. One afternoon in spring, 4 years after the warehouse, I received a letter. Prison postmark. My father's handwriting. I almost threw it away, unopened. But curiosity won. Atlas, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't forgive myself. I let greed and desperation turn me into a monster. I destroyed the one thing that should have been sacred. My son's life. There's no excuse, no explanation that makes it acceptable. I'll die in prison, and that's what I deserve. But I wanted you to know that every day, I remember the boy you were. The kid who helped me in the garage, who made me laugh, who trusted me. I killed that boy as surely as if I'd succeeded in my plan. I'm sorry. It means nothing, changes nothing, but I'm sorry. Your father, Robert. I read it twice. Felt the words try to find purchase in my heart, try to create some feeling. But there was nothing there for him anymore. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and never looked at it again. My mother reached out too, through her lawyer. She'd lost the house in the civil suit, lost the retirement money, lost everything. She was living with her sister, working retail, barely getting by. She wanted to meet, to talk, to explain. I declined. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some people don't deserve a second chance, especially when they use their first chance to try to murder you. Garrett was released after serving 6.5 years. He tried to contact me multiple times. Emails, letters, messages through mutual acquaintances. I blocked it all. He'd made his choices. He'd valued Johns Hopkins over my life. There was no relationship to salvage there. But I heard through the grapevine that he was working at a pharmacy, living in a small apartment, keeping his head down. He'd never be a doctor. His felony conviction made that impossible. Sometimes I wondered if he thought the insurance money would have been worth it now. If he regretted his choice or just regretted getting caught. I didn't care enough to find out. On a warm Saturday in June, 5 years after the warehouse, Rachel and I hosted a barbecue at our house. 20 people in our backyard, laughing and talking. James arguing good-naturedly with Angela about a legal case. Dr. Brennan telling stories about her garden. Eddie showing everyone pictures of his grandkids. I stood at the grill, flipping burgers, and looked around at these people. My real family. The ones who'd chosen me, supported me, believed me, fought for me. Rachel came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Happy? She asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I said. I am. And I meant it. My parents had looked at me and seen worthlessness. A disposable son, a means to an end, an insurance policy to cash in. But they'd been wrong. I'd built a life that mattered. I helped people every single day. I had love, friendship, purpose, meaning. I'd been the spare son, the one who wasn't going anywhere. But being spare meant I was free. Free from their expectations, their manipulations, their toxic definition of success. Garrett had chased their approval and ended up in prison. I'd lost their approval and found my life. The insurance policy my father took out on me was for $500,000. He thought that was my value, my worth, the price of my life. But I'd taken that blood money and turned it into something pure, a foundation that had saved over 200 lives, relationships built on genuine love and trust, a future I'd built myself. on my own terms. That was worth more than any dollar amount. I'd learned that family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, and love. It's about people who see your value even when you can't see it yourself. People who fight for you instead of trying to profit from your death. I'd also learned that surviving isn't enough. You have to take the pain, the trauma, the injustice, and transform it. Use it as fuel to build something meaningful. Otherwise, the people who hurt you win, even if they're behind bars. My father got 30 years in prison. He'd be 83 when released, if he lived that long. Garrett got 8 years and served 6.5. The legal system had worked, more or less. But the real victory wasn't their sentences. It was standing in my backyard 5 years later, surrounded by people who loved me, doing work that mattered, living a life my parents had tried to steal from me. They'd wanted me dead so my brother could go to college. Instead, they destroyed his future, destroyed their own, and freed me to become someone they never imagined I could be. That's the funny thing about trying to erase someone. Sometimes you just give them permission to recreate themselves. I was Atlas Davies, 28 years old, when my family tried to murder me. 33 now, founder of a nonprofit that saved lives, social worker in training, partner to an incredible woman, friend to amazing people, not the boy they wanted dead, but the man they made possible by showing me exactly what not to be. I took the burgers off the grill. James raised his beer in a toast. To Atlas, he said, the most stubborn son of a gun I've ever met. Everyone laughed and raised their drinks. To Atlas, they echoed. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, the sound of laughter in my ears, the presence of real family around me. I'd survived. I'd healed. As much as anyone heals from something like that, I'd won. Not because I'd gotten revenge or made my parents suffer, but because I'd refused to let them define me, refused to let their cruelty turn me cruel, refused to let their greed make me bitter. I'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and built something beautiful from the wreckage. That was my triumph. That was my justice. That was my life, reclaimed. And I'd never been more grateful to be alive. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after a betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? What helped you heal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling right now. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories, and maybe someone who needs to hear this message of hope will find it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I share stories of survival, resilience, and triumph over adversity every week. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes knowing that someone else survived something terrible gives us the courage to keep fighting. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are in your own journey, you remember that you're stronger than you think. That survival is possible. That healing is possible. That building a meaningful life after trauma is possible. You matter. Your life has value beyond what anyone else assigns to it. And no matter what you're facing, there's hope on the other side. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And remember, you're never truly alone.